Hey, if you're a PA and you've ever thought about starting your own business and you don't know where to start, this video is for you. I'm Michelle Neske, the Posh PA, and welcome back to my channel where today we are going to talk all things PA entrepreneurship. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. I'm here every month dropping new videos to help you get in PA school and become a successful practicing PA. Okay, so first off today, I have guests. So let's introduce our guests. You know me, I'm Michelle Neske. I am a practicing PA. We also have Ashlin Smith and Phoebe Gutierrez. Ashlin, why don't you give a brief intro?
Thank you, Michelle. I'm Ashlin Smith. As Michelle mentioned, I'm an endocrine PA based out of Arizona. I've been practicing for 14 years in the endocrine space and doing a lot of other things for the last 12 years as well, and recently branching out into creating my own practice. I'm excited to be chatting about the different opportunities that brings.
Awesome. Phoebe?
And I am Phoebe. I am a healthcare compliance consultant. So I get to work really closely with a lot of different healthcare organizations. And I have just naturally and organically kind of gravitated towards PAs because I feel like PAs are my people and they want to they want to launch services. They want to become entrepreneurs on their own. And I have been able to help, coach them and guide them and get them to take that leap.
Awesome. And we all connected at this year's annual AAPA conference. So if you're a PA and you do not attend that conference, I highly suggest you do. And we saw Phoebe talking on an entrepreneurship panel. And so we'll dive into a little bit more about that. But we'll start today just with why more PAs are starting businesses, what types of entrepreneurship there are for PAs out there, and what are some of the biggest challenges and how we could potentially help you moving forward. I think more PAs are branching out, wanting to start their own business because of a desire for a little more autonomy, control over your schedule, non-clinical income streams. And, I know for me personally, that's what it was about. Someone else dictating when I could take vacation, when I could be home with my daughter and all of that. And I just wanted more control over that. And that's how I sort of started the Posh PA. It wasn't really initially to quit my clinical job full time because I love my clinical job. Some people, however, do want to, move into the non-clinical space. But there are a lot of different ways to do that. But that's kind of how I got started, just wanting more flexibility, especially after the pandemic. So I don't know. What about you, Ashlyn?
My story is pretty similar, actually. I think that, after probably about the 10-year mark, I was hitting that a little bit of that frustration, wanting a little bit more of that autonomy. But it really came down to needing to find a more reasonable balance for my family. And I was finding that work was taking up the vast majority of my time and really limiting, I was missing cheer performances for my daughter, and I was missing classes with my son. I was missing field trips. I was missing all the things that I thought I should be going to, and they're still little, so there's so much of that. And it really came down to there was a particularly stressful season at my previous job where I really lost a lot of that power suddenly, and it came to the forefront that if the system's not changing, I needed to change something and take some of that take that leap into entrepreneurship. And I agree, it's not because I wanted to leave clinical practice. It's really just I was looking for something that fit my life and my family's needs and my work-life balance a little bit more.
Yeah. And I feel like, even with the rise of social media and the presence of all these non-clinical income streams, I think a lot of people are like, wow, what could I be doing, to potentially get a little bit more flexibility? And like you said, you can't necessarily wait for your employer or the healthcare system to change. Like you have to make that change for that flexibility. And it's scary and it's hard. Is that what you see with PAs who come to you, Phoebe?
Yes, exactly. So most of the PAs that I work with are in either a different state of either feeling completely burnt out, a lot of them are actually very close to quitting clinical work and wanting to actually just like completely remove themselves from clinical practice. And so when I start working with them, it's like, well, there's other things that you could actually do as a PA that, you might actually find some happiness in. And so, we, talk about different things, what interests them, what they liked, what they didn't like. I think ultimately it boils down to, I think we're at this point where post COVID, especially, you can do clinical work at home, you can find work-life balance, and you can find happiness outside of an ER or an OR, or, you can actually do these things now and control them a little bit better than in the past.
I agree. And that's kind of a good segue into talking about the different types, of entrepreneurship, because I think people think about either starting their own clinic as, entrepreneurship, or maybe coaching and consulting, but there's a lot of different ways, to step into entrepreneurship as a PA. Mine happened to be, in the coaching space and in the consulting space. So I can speak a little bit about that. But when I got started, it was very organic. I helped a few people who worked with me, get into PA school. They were clinical research assistants, and they were very confused. And having myself gone through that process, even though many years ago, I remember specifically being the only person in my family with ever going medical. I had no idea what I was doing. It was very confusing back then. And it's even more confusing now and more competitive. And so I thought to myself, well, wow, if I had someone like me back then, I would have been all in. And that's kind of where I was like, you know what? There's a lot of students out there that could need help with this, and just started, posting a lot of things for free and talking about my experience. And, next thing I knew, things were moving pretty quickly, and here I am 6 years later. And, I still love it. And I still now, 6 years in, I've been able to, at year 4 or 5, I went down to significantly part-time clinical. And that's been a game changer for my family, for my daughter, for me. And it does take a lot of work, and it takes a lot of time, and it's a very different experience because we're not taught how to be business people in PA school. We're taught how to be clinicians, and it's a totally different learning curve than I ever experienced. And so that is one area, that you can go into, and we can kind of get into the details of what the challenges are a little bit later. But Ashlin, I think you could speak more to the starting your own practice kind of thing, right?
Yes, I kind of realized as I was going through this experience that I was not realizing that I was doing some of that, additional work with, and not really counting it as entrepreneurial. It was just stuff that I loved doing. So creating medical education content, consulting for med ed companies, and really working in that space. I've been doing that for 12 years in addition to the full-time job. And you're right, there comes a point where you kind of have to find a better balance there. And that, in combination with, what my family needs were, I've chosen the, build your own clinic path, specifically intending for it to be a part-time clinic so that I can still, have that clinical care that I personally want to still have, but have some time for that other work that I enjoy so much. And it is a completely different animal. You are correct. Building your own clinic versus stepping into everything that's already established. There are a lot of questions that I didn't even know I would need to ask, and just working along through that. And, as these questions come up, finding the right person to talk to about it. And I think that's really where finding the right people and finding the right, connections is so important to help navigate that, because things like even what state you're in can really, really change what you are or maybe are not able to do. So I think navigating that can be tricky, but I am really excited because I'm building a clinic that I'm so proud of, and being able to kind of practice the type of medicine that I've wanted to practice. I work in the endocrine space, and there's such a need for endocrine plus, right? People go to endocrinology because a lot of times they feel terrible, and
Mhm.
they've been told by so many people, everything's fine, or all your labs are normal, but there's something else that's missing. So incorporating that whole health approach and that lifestyle medicine approach to endocrinology is something I've already been trying to do within the system, but finding that space to be able to really practice the type of medicine that I want to is exciting. So it's worth the effort.
Yeah.
It definitely is if you're looking in the clinical space, but it is tricky depending on different laws where you are.
And I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of questions about that. So we'll come back to that. But Phoebe, what are some of the other areas that you see PAs maybe wanting to go into, like online courses or, telemed?
Yeah, so I think one of the things I always encourage PAs to do is you can and Ashlyn and I actually worked on this. You can totally build your own clinic, but you also have to understand like that's going to take time. Getting patients, doing branding, doing SEO content, really getting everything out there, that takes time. And while you're doing that, there's so many other ways that you can also explore entrepreneurship. So, as somebody who has just been in digital health, I always encourage PAs to you can get 1099 telemedicine jobs. You can go on these different platforms. Sesame is one, I think Open Loop. There's a few. And I know that there aren't as many telemedicine platforms that use PAs as, there's a lot that use NPs, but they are out there. You just kind of have to do some searching. And if you can, do that, that ultimately gives you the same balance and freedom because a lot of these are like, kind of like Lyft. You're able to just pick up the jobs that you want. So it's kind of nice.
That's
Um, and then also, like I always say, like I am not a clinician, but I understand the clinical language and I love clinical education. So putting yourself out there and doing some e-courses and really trying to speak to people who maybe can't afford to, get direct care from you, but would be interested in purchasing an e-course to understand how they can make some lifestyle changes. Little things like that, I think could, it might not be something that's an immediate revenue source, but those are also ways that you can generate income as a PA still using clinical work.
definitely. And even speaking, becoming a speaker, an ebook, things like that. I think you bring up a very good point. There are so many ways to start generating that income. And I think the one thing that, I quickly learned is like you said, this isn't going to happen overnight. I think in medicine, we're trained if you work hard and you get here, this happens, like this is what you get. This is so different, in that space. And, just please don't quit your job like year one, like do some of these other 1099 things while you're building, while you're trying to get to that point. Because, anyone out there that's on social that's saying they quit their job within 6 months of doing something, I would be very wary of. But it takes time. And I think there are so many options out there for people to start making a little bit of extra money for that flexibility. All right, so I want to talk about challenges because I know I did another video on this channel about becoming a PA entrepreneur, and I got a lot of questions about legality, compliance, sort of working with a supervising physician. And I think Ashlyn touched on this a little bit because she's really going into creating a clinic or in a clinical space or a telemedicine space where it's going to be so different than what space I'm in from the coaching and consulting space. So can you speak to any of the challenges you've kind of seen in that space, you and Phoebe, because you've worked together on this, and Phoebe has a ton of background in compliance and all the legality about this?
Yes, and I think that that's really where, we haven't been taught as PAs how to navigate that. And a lot of us are used to kind of stepping into a clinic space that is already set up, the onboarding and everything is already established. So walking through that, it takes quite a bit of work and quite a bit of research. And, anything from first, can I own a practice in my state? that's probably the first question to ask before you start down that road, because it does vary so much. And I'm fortunate because Arizona is pretty flexible with that, so we are able to. But I've definitely been in communication with the Arizona Board of Regulatory PAs back and forth with some questions, because sometimes that legalese is so confusing to try to navigate. And I think another important thing to know is, can you can you be a full owner, or do you have to have a physician who is, is it 100% physician owned? Is it 51%? What is that balance that's needed? And then navigating the, collaborative practice agreement and finding a collaborative doc is a whole different animal, because again, that's usually built in to the system. So I think if you're looking into clinical practice, and Phoebe, I'm sure you have great insights to add to this, so I'll have you chat about it in just a second. But I think the first question is just finding out if your state allows that to happen and what kind of physician involvement there needs to be. I'll add one little pearl that I learned in Arizona, that Arizona has a collaborative practice agreement. So if you have worked as a clinician for 8,000 hours, you can move from a supervisory position to a collaborative position. And if you have that agreement on file, then your collaborating doc doesn't even have to be in the same practice, like the same specialty that you are, but they have to be willing to be, in an agreement with you. So that does add a lot more flexibility when you're looking at, finding that collaborative physician.
That's interesting because, here in South Carolina, so I assume you went to the Arizona medical board and asked some of these questions.
Yes, directly.
Okay.
I went straight to the source.
Okay. So here in South Carolina, you have to have a physician as partnership for you to own your own clinic. So it is definitely a little bit different. Whereas I spoke to a PA in California, it was kind of the same. They could own a certain amount of the practice, but they had to have an MD kind of with them as well. So I really encourage people to ask their state organizations, ask their medical board. Is that what you would say, Phoebe?
Yeah. I mean, you could ask the medical board. Sometimes they'll give you straight answers. Sometimes they won't. In working with PAs, a lot of times I actually had a meeting yesterday with a PA who was so excited to launch her practice. She had her business set up. She had an LLC. She was so gung ho. And I was like, you can't own this. What's you need a physician. The physician has to own 100% in your state. And I think that also kind of scares some PAs. Like if somebody told me I'm going to go build my own business, but I have to 100% sign ownership over to somebody else, that's a scary thing. But it all boils down to the corporate practice of medicine doctrine, which basically means that physicians are the ones who technically should own clinics so they can control the clinical decision making. It's really just to avoid, that you're doing anything unlawful, to make money as a business owner. So it's not really directed at providers, but unfortunately, PAs are kind of thrown into the bucket of non-physicians. So, to Ashlin's point, it varies state by state. Every state has different rules and requirements. There are a good chunk of states where a PA can own their own practice. In most, if not all states, there does have to be some sort of physician involvement. Mainly, again, just you're going to want somebody to call if something happens and you don't know how to proceed. So I always look at it instead of this I have to have a physician. It's no, that could be a physician mentor. It could be a physician support system. They can really help you. And then through that, you're going to be able to meet with them monthly and, kind of get training and advice and recommendations. And a lot of times you're able to, hopefully you're able to find the right physician who is either built their own practice also and has some experience there, is working in the same field as you and can kind of show you maybe some additional things that you could layer into your practice. So there's a lot of ways you can actually use your physician. But to, both of your points, this is something that has confused a lot of people. It confuses a lot of businesses today still. And it is one of those things where you can definitely call the boards. A lot of times the boards will kick you back out. You can ask friends, but ultimately you're going to have to kind of do some research and actually interpret the rules a little bit on your own.
Yeah, because that's what I've heard where people have reached out to the medical board and they're not getting a straight answer. Where can I get a straight answer? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm not sure where you can get a straight answer. I know, in South Carolina here, mostly the PA owned businesses have a medical director physician. And I agree with you. It is nice to have that person, on in collaboration with you there. I don't know what the law looks like here or how that's interpreted. And so is that something you help people with, Phoebe, or is that something they can find on their own somewhere?
Oh yeah, no. If you have if anybody has questions about can I own a practice in this state, like I've done all the research across all the states, so I can totally help, guide you. Again, it's a really confusing thing. And so these regulations, the corporate practice of medicine doctrine, there are attorneys that don't agree. So part of it is like I can give you my best guess on like here's what the rules are, but at the end of the day you're kind of going to have to make some judgment calls. Some are really like set, really easy to understand, and then others kind of like Arizona where Ashlin and I were kind of going back and forth like,
Yeah,
I mean, this could mean this and that.
I have to add that when I got the answer back from the Arizona Regulatory Board, I totally went to Phoebe and I was like, am I reading this right? What is this trying to say? So it is good to have, I think one thing that's really great about being PAs, we're used to working in teams.
Yes.
So it is good to have those teammates to reach out to and make sure that, you're on the right track or at least get some feedback because it is confusing.
Definitely. And I think that, if you're not trying to start a clinical practice, but even if you are, a lot of the other challenges I feel like are, just imposter syndrome, failure, learning social media, like, knowing where to start, right? Like, how do I juggle this with my clinical work and assign some time to it? How do I even show up on social media about this, email lists, branding, scheduling, all of those things that you don't even really think about when you're like, I just want to help some people, do this. In the coaching and consulting space, I can say that was a huge learning curve for me, how to set up back end business operations when I really had no formal business training. So even setting up, my LLC and then saying, okay, here are the mission and vision of my business. Here are our, program outcomes, going through those like pillars. I had to hire somebody for that. I never did anything like that before, and how to streamline it, into something where people could book a service and could pay and all that kind of downstream kind of stuff that you're so excited at first, to do. But then you're like, oh, I have this service for this, then I have this service for this, and I have this for this. And then you're like, am I making any money? Because I'm paying for all these services, and then kind of reevaluating. And so those back end sort of operations for me, and even just setting up, a coaching consulting business LLC. And then just the straight up, like, are people even going to do this? Like, am I like, is this really like a thing, And so I do feel like there's a lot of that, no matter what you're doing, from a mindset perspective. So I feel like it's mindset, not knowing where to start, and for me, that those kind of operational things that I just really needed help with. And you wind up kind of piecemealing. Mm-hmm. I have this person to help me with this, and then I have this person to help me with this. And so, but now we have something really exciting, right? So let's talk a little bit about the Independent PA Collective, why y'all are starting this and what it offers to people, because I know for me, I am really excited. I have a lot of PAs that come to me asking if I can help them, build their brand like I did, or help them, start their own business. And, it's sometimes hard to navigate in one direction or another. But I think this is an awesome solution for PAs looking to dip into entrepreneurship. So one of you who wants to talk about it first, go ahead.
Oh, I will jump in. I have for a very long time, been partnering with PAs. And I think the joke that I have said is I'm kind of tired of like regurgitating the same information over and over again. And, typically it's all kind of the same process. You have to follow these same 10 steps. You can think about these few other things that you can do on the outside. What do you want to outsource? What do you want to keep in-house? And the driving factor is always, I don't have a lot of money to start. Let's try to do this as affordable as possible. And, to me, the beauty in this is, as a team, we can totally teach you how to do this independently. So, to your point, Michelle, you're not going to have to outsource how to build a website or how to build those back, office operations, because we're going to kind of give you some of the tools to be able to at least decide, is this something you want to tackle yourself or something you want to outsource? And so we started IPAC, or the Independent Physician Associates Collective, which we are going to be launching very, very soon. And it's going to be focusing on all these core topics. And I think the one thing that I'm the most excited about is beauty really comes from collaboration. And I am a really collaborative person. And I hope that we're going to be able to bring PAs together who can actually brainstorm and learn from one another versus me. And I really want to see if there's even synergy between different PAs, to where it's like, okay, I don't have to do this thing alone. Let's partner. You can go write the educational stuff. I'll work on the website, and then they could join, maybe build a practice together. So those are some of the things that we're hoping to come out of, IPAC.
That's
I
awesome.
completely agree. And really, it was through working with Phoebe that I was working through each one of these questions, and then just hearing her vision of, well, what if we could make this something that PAs could come to and not have to repeat it all those same steps again and again on their own. And it was like, yes, why wouldn't we leverage this experience and use that to help empower other PAs? And it, to your point, Michelle, and not have to wonder about, okay, I have to ask this person about this and this person about this and this person about this. It's really, no matter what kind of area of entrepreneurship you're looking into, we have those kind of core pillars built in, talking about the legality side of it, talking about branding and marketing and all of those things, that those questions that come up along the way, kind of no matter what area you're looking in. And I'm most excited about, like you said, Phoebe, that I'm most excited about that community, about creating a safe place for people to come to and ask those questions, because pretty much every entrepreneurial PA is asking those questions in different spaces, but having that dedicated space where it's okay to ask those questions, those tough questions, the confusing ones, all those things that are coming up, and we're all kind of on that same journey. So it's okay to ask those questions. And we've got some amazing subject matter experts who can give that insight and those tools to be able to do a lot of it on your own, because PAs are incredibly capable. We just haven't been taught this side of how to be a PA.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I know the community piece that is something that I would have really loved. And also someone like Phoebe, somebody inside saying, hey, this is what you can build as a PA realistically. Here's how to start and set it up, even things like building your offer, setting your pricing, things like that I was like, I don't know. I was going to competitor websites and being like, they're charging this, so maybe I'll charge this, trying to figure out what to do there. And even like you said, website, people that, I know some other PAs that are awesome at Canva and design. Maybe that person wants to help me, with content or, whatever it is. And so I think this is just really kind of a hub, right, for PAs that are either looking to build something or have built something that can offer guidance, or maybe even just they want growth. Okay, I've done this, how can I get bigger? How can this become my full-time job? And I feel like something like that doesn't exist for PAs. And this is the first time I've heard of it. And that's why I got so excited about it, because I have people that come to me all the time, tell me how you did this, how can I do what you do, or I can't do what you do. And that's the biggest misconception. Anybody can do what I do. You just got to know how. And I think this would be a really nice way for people to get involved and really just have that one spot. So how can we find out? So IPAC, I am going to put a link to the Independent Physician Associate Collective in the description of this video. But do you want to give a little bit more detail, Phoebe, on how they can join?
Sure. Yeah. So visit our website. There you'll be able to register. You can also register for our free chat. So one thing that we want, again, we really want to drive community. And so we don't want price to be a barrier to entry. And so we actually have a completely free community that people can join today and just get free access to our chat boards, our community events where we're just, doing different webinars. I host free consulting there, and, different PAs join. And then we're also raffling off entrants. So, if you want to throw your name in the hat and potentially win a really big discount to be able to register, that is, kind of the best process. And we're hoping to get launched as soon as we're full. So originally we were planning on launching around the end of August. We're thinking it's going to be kind of early September. And we're going to be doing, weekly sessions. I think the cool thing that I didn't actually mention beforehand is we are going to tailor this experience to all the people that actually register. So just because, the curriculum right now is built around building a clinic, if everybody joins and wants to learn how to do coaching, we're pivoting and we are going to be talking about how to do coaching. If there's others that want to learn about e-courses, we're going to build in e-courses, and I'm going to show you how I've done it and made money. And so we're really going to be working hand in hand with everybody who is an IPAC member to really make this experience the best for you.
And I also want to say that you don't have to be a practicing PA. So if you're a student interested in entrepreneurship, or you're a pre-PA and you're wondering if you're looking into the PA profession as a career and you're like, well, I might want to be a PA entrepreneur later, you're certainly welcome to join that free chat as well. Especially if you're a student that's nearing the end of your clinical year and are thinking about, a specialty that you love or starting your own practice, this would be a great place to kind of jump in and learn more about that too.
Yeah. And also, if you are a PA student, we are also giving you free access to some of our collective events. So if you are interested, but again, if pricing is an issue because you're a student, we get it. We still want you to join, and we still want you to be able to get this, education and learning. And we're happy to give you, significant discounts.
Yeah. And I think the most important thing is you don't have to figure this out alone. That's, I think, the message we're all trying to give you here. But, definitely comment below, share your business idea with us. Do you have a business idea? I'd love to see that in the comments. Or maybe you have questions for Phoebe or Ashlin or me. Please be sure to drop them there as well. Share the video with somebody who you think needs to hear it. But there's really never been a better time to start creating flexibility and freedom, as a PA. Our profession is growing, it's changing, and it's a great time to get started. So any final words from you guys? Awesome.
I would just say that, don't be afraid of asking those questions. We've got a safe place for you. And I think if you're asking those questions, a lot of people are asking those questions. And I'm happy to chat. I know Phoebe is an amazing resource, and Michelle, your expertise is incredible. So I'm just so excited to be on this journey, and welcome anybody who is also looking to join this journey as well.
Yeah, I hope you'll join us in IPAC, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.